There may not be a possibility at this moment of explaining why or how we can get out of attunement, but the acknowledgement must be made that as a human race we are not under the law of God, neither indeed can be. We are not being governed by the rhythm of the spirit of the silence, and it may very well be that it is because we insist on taking thought, because we insist on a way of our own, a will of our own, a family strictly of our own, instead of, yes, it could well be that we come partly back into the rhythm by acknowledging that there is only one family and that we are of the household of God, and thereby uniting ourselves with the people of all races, of all religions, all colors, all creeds, acknowledging the common fatherhood of God. And this would, in one way, restore harmony. Another way I see is, yes, and it shows me the wisdom of the ancient teaching of tithing. Only do not misunderstand it. The ancient teaching of tithing did not mean that if you tithed your income you could expect some blessings. We cannot enter into any merchandising arrangement with God that we give 10% and He gives back 90%. But tithing, in the sense of acknowledging our relationship, not merely to my flesh and blood, but acknowledging my relationship to all mankind, then I place myself in the rhythm of that relationship, and in providing for others in addition to my own, I am not merely intellectually acknowledging a relationship, but I am living in the rhythm of it. I'm in the rhythm of my relationship to mankind when I first of all acknowledge that relationship and then act on it by making some measure of provision for others outside of my own flesh and blood household, or my own religious household, or my own national household. Do you see how to re-establish ourselves in this original rhythm, it becomes necessary to do it by an act? Not merely an intellectual knowledge, but it must be followed by an act. This is a commitment. This is a commitment. If I declare that we are all of the household of God, and then I continue to live only for my own family or the members of my own religion or my own nation, I'm virtually contradicting myself and setting up a friction. And my condition is then worse than the person who is ignorant of this universal relationship. Once I acknowledge this universal relationship by an act of commitment, I must enter into the rhythm. And I must commence to act in some way that will commit me to the welfare of those others outside the relationship of my home or community or nation or church. In the same way, then, if I acknowledge my Christhood, merely acknowledge it, I set up at once a friction within my own being that is far worse than if I had never heard of my Christhood. Because having heard of it, I must now do it. There must be an act of commitment in which I live as the Christ, and in order to understand that, we may take such examples as Gautama the Buddha or Jesus the Christ, and witness the nature of the lives that they led. Not that we are going to equal their lives. That, of course, can never be. Each of us is an individual, and we unfold individually. But at least we can see what is meant by accepting one's Christhood, and then even make a beginning by doing something unto the least of these my brethren. Something, even if it's a little, unto the least of these my brethren, in order that this little that we do may continue to increase in scope, depth, breadth, vision. To acknowledge the Christhood of our fellow man is to bring forth another act of commitment, because not only in the acknowledgement of my Christhood must I act insofar as the light is given me, the Christ, but in the moment that I recognize the Christ of you, I am now called upon to act toward you as if you were the Christ. And as I bow my head in the presence of the Master, so do I bow my head in the presence of everyone I meet. Those of you who have traveled in Oriental countries will understand this, because you will remember that in all Oriental countries people greet each other by a bowing of the head, or bringing together of the hands and the bowing of the head, which is an acknowledgement a recognition of the Buddha nature, of the Christ nature of those they meet. Always there is an act of commitment. very often, students wonder if their spiritual teacher is aware of the nature or the degree of their spiritual unfoldment, or lack of it. And you may be assured that it is as impossible to hide the degree of spiritual unfoldment from the teacher as it would be to hide from God, because there is a sign, and that sign is an act of commitment. Until the teacher observes that sign, they know exactly how far spiritual development has not proceeded. The moment they witness the sign of commitment, they know that the student has gone over the hump, has reached a place beyond humanhood. But this is not until that act of commitment, in one form or another, is observed. And it doesn't have to be observed physically. One doesn't have to be within thousands of miles of the student to know when the act of commitment has taken place.